would like to discuss an aspect of Yetzias Mitzrayim, not of the miracles, but rather that what Yetzias Mitzrayim means to us in the forming of a nation. Lovo lakachas legoy bekerev goy. Kadosh Baruch Hu took a nation out of an existing nation and created a new nation of Klal Yisrael. Just to have a 51st state does not really change America, right? It doesn't really make a difference. There's some people that maybe remember the flag with 48 stars on it. Ken? Okay, I remember hearing about that. Anyways, but it didn't change America too much, did it? Didn't change. So you have more people, you have less people, there's 58 cities, countries, nations. What's the difference that now that there's a Klal Yisrael? So some people would just say, obviously, well, it means us. But, as we see in the event of Kabbalas HaTorah, the creation of Klal Yisrael actually was a worldwide effect. It wasn't just something that happened locally and just had to move over all the other stars on the flag to make room for the new ones. It actually changed the way that the world works. And I will start with a medrash, which says that there are 26 Kilo Olam Chazdos in Hodu. And each one of those represent a generation, 26 generations that existed from the time of creation until Kabbalas HaTorah. Because the world didn't deserve to exist. It only existed out of the grace of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's Kilo Olam Chazdoi. When Klal Yisrael accepted the Torah, we didn't need to exist Kilo Olam Chazdo. We deserve to exist ourselves because we accepted the Torah. So that's already a world-changing event. Klal Yisrael accepting the Torah. The fact that Klal Yisrael came into existence on the Leil HaSeder is also a major change in the way the world functions. I would like to say over a very famous Hasidic story because I believe that the story is so true. Now, whether it happened or not, I have no idea. But the story is true. And the message of the story is amazing. There was this boy who was a Yasam that lived in a on-the-road tavern, inn, pundik, whatever you call it, depends what literature you read. And he became orphaned. He didn't have any schooling, but it was good from a boy. He did what he knew how to do. His father taught him how to read. And every day he would read 5 pages of the Siddur. This great Chassidish Rebbe came to stay in the inn, and he sees this pious boy in the middle of the winter doing Al Chet of Yom Kippur. And didn't go over so well with him. And he asked him, what are you doing? He says, well, I don't really know how to daven. I just know they're supposed to daven. So I do the siddur, and whenever I'm finished, I start over again. So the Rebbe said that there are actually specific prayers, specific times, etc. And this kid was very thankful. And the Rebbe gave him all the information, and he put in, they didn't have those post-its, place markers in the olden days. He put in pieces of straw and wrote on the straw each thing what it was for, when you're supposed to say it. And this boy was ecstatic. Now he's going to daven like a mensch, like he's supposed to daven. He didn't really know he was doing anything wrong before, but now he knows he's doing it right, and he was very excited about it. And as soon as the Rebbe left, the boy took out his siddur to daven, and his excitement, he opened it up, and it fell on the floor, and all the pieces of straw fell out. And what am I going to do? So he saw that the Rebbe left a short while ago, so he decided he's going to follow him, bring his siddur to him, and have him put back the piece of straw. And he sees the Rebbe comes to a river, and he takes the tail of his coat and dips it into the river and walks across. So this boy who never saw a river before, he assumed that's the normal way, that's how you lift the gate or something like that. So he dipped his coat into the water and walked across, and he eventually caught up with the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, "What are you doing here?" So he explained to him, "Look what happened, my piece of straw fell out, and I came back to have you put them back in." So the Rebbe said, "How'd you get here?" He said, "I followed you." He said, "And how'd you get across the river?" I said, "I followed you." So what do you mean? I said, "The exact same thing as you did. I dipped my coat into the water and I walked across." So the Rebbe said, "Just go back home and continue doing what you're doing till now." This is a famous Chassidish story, which perhaps we'll take it apart in different levels at different times. But for my purposes, I think that this illustrates the unbelievable emunah pshuta that people can have. Now, I have an issue with the Rebbe. What's the Rebbe doing? Why was he crossing the river by dipping his coat into the water? Like, why didn't he take a ferry? Why didn't he take a bridge? Why was he doing this? And I believe the answer to the question is, why not? Now, this needs to be explained. The Gemara in Shabbos has a machlokes mikatza lakatza, a totally polarized machlokes, and whenever that happens, you need to explain it. The Gemara says that there was a man who was orphan, he was made into almond. His wife died, and he had a small baby, and the nas and nes, and his chest was able to produce milk just like a woman, and he weaned his child. And the Gemara says two girsayos. One girsa says, "What an amazing man," and the other girsa says, "What a horrible man." Because one is because look, he had a miracle happen for him, and the other side of the Gemara says he was mishana ma'isa b'reishis. Men are not supposed to nurse babies. This is like a guy walking across the river. This is not what's supposed to happen. So what kind of a machlokes is that? Like, Klal Yisrael doesn't have a way to go. This machlokes should be non-existent. I'm not sure if it should be that this is called wow or this is called terrible. But what's the machlokes about? How do we understand such a machlokes? So I'm going to give you my explanation. I'm going to start with a question which is unanswerable and offer an answer. But I still think that the question's unanswerable, even though I think that the answer is correct. Yaakov Avinu made a business deal with Lavan. Lavan was a swindler. And Lavan changed the deal after signing it 100 times. That's what it says in the Zohar, 100 times. And Yaakov Avinu, let's say they made up stripes, so Yaakov Avinu put stripes into a piece of wood to put them into the water, and then Lavan changes it has to be dots. And a miracle happened. The sheep gave birth to spotted baby goats. I can't remember right now the name, whatever they're called. What? Kids, thank you. I knew there was a name for it, right? And then the next round, they're putting in squares, and he puts in squares, and then he says, "No, I want big splotches." And they give birth to big splotches. So, how many times, this is an IQ test, how many times would it take for you to think that Yaakov would give up on putting something onto the sticks. It's obvious that Hashem is making a miracle happen, and obviously has nothing to do with his ishtadlus. So why doesn't he just go back to the Beis Medrash? I mean, is that called ishtadlus? Now, this happened 100 times. I may be a smart guy. I think by 50 or 60 times, I would probably figure out that there's not much going on. So if I would meet my grandfather Yaakov at the 95th time, and I say, "What you doing?" What's he going to say? Shtadlus. Says, "Don't you know that it doesn't work?" Says, "I'm doing my shtadlus, it works. But don't you know that's Hashem's problem, that's not my problem." Now that emunah, that's amazing. We have just moved up. Beforehand we spoke about the guy walking on water, right? And what's he doing? Now I'd like to go to the next level. And I believe that this next level is a fascinating thing. You know, I'll just use something which we find almost impossible to understand otherwise. We have plumbing. Plumbing is a fascinating thing, and if it wouldn't be for gravity, we'd have many issues. In other words, where's the waste going? It doesn't go down the drain by itself. It goes down the drain because there's gravity, right? And if we wouldn't have plumbing, we just have, I don't know what we'd have exactly. We'd have like a thing of water in the middle of nowhere. It would probably just, disperse and cause the ozone problems. I don't know exactly, because it would get over everywhere. It wouldn't go anywhere, right? It would just spread out. And we live with gravity as if it's normal. There's nothing normal about gravity. We're just used to it, that's all. And we call these nisim teva, because these are repetitive, they happen all the time, and we just get excited about it when we think about it. The other day, I saw a rainbow, and I was very pained because I couldn't remember the bracha correctly, and it was a race between the rainbow and me if I'm going to get home, and the rainbow won, and I didn't get to say a bracha on it. Anyways, but I was looking at that rainbow, and I was saying, this is amazing. Now, there's nothing amazing about a rainbow. There's nothing amazing about a rainbow, because anybody takes a prism, glass of water, you could do it too. But it doesn't compare to a rainbow. I'll just on a personal level, from the weirdest things that I've seen in my life, that struck me as weird and it shouldn't have, I was next to a business building in a city in Michigan, and a helicopter almost landed about 4 feet above the ground. A guy jumped out. He was from Walt or something like that. He jumped out, ran in, gave a briefcase to somebody, and then jumped back down to the helicopter, and it took off. And I remember seeing that helicopter was about this high off the ground, just like swinging in the air. You don't belong here. You could be up there in the sky, you could be up down the ground, but just hanging around at eye level, it was maddening. And I remember I was a little kid and I was thinking about, what am I so mesmerized by? This is exactly what I see every time I see a helicopter standing still in the air. But it's still a new experience when you see it at eye level. And it was very difficult for me to live it down that this is unusual. Because I know that this is nothing unusual that I'm seeing. But that's what happens. So when we have, the Gemara tells us about, if I'm not mistaken, Reb Chia, that he said, Mishomer Shemin Yadlik, Yomer Choymetz Yadlik. If he didn't have oil, and he used vinegar, and it worked just like oil. And he said, big deal. Is there any reason why oil should burn? You're just used to it. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu can make a nes and have chometz burn also. Now this piece is something that Moshe Shapiro speaks about, and he says something amazing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has many names. Now, I had the schus of learning a lot from my father, Zechariah Levracha, and he always amazed me. Always, even on regular days. And sometimes he amazed me because things which are unexplainable, he was able to explain them in a very simple manner. One of those times that I remember so vividly was a man came over to my father. He was not a very well-learned man. And he says, why does God have so many names? He never went bankrupt. Okay, that's not the reason why. So why did he have so many names? Why does Hashem have so many names? So he said to this fellow, he said, what's your name? So he said, Mr. So-and-so. He said, what do your friends call you? He said, Charlie. What do they call you? Your business partners? Charles. What does your mother call you? Chaim. Or sometimes Chaimke. What does your wife call you? And this fellow, without knowing where we're going, he listed off about 10 names that he has. So then my father said to him, so what's your name? And then he fell for it and just gave his name again. So what are all those other things? And he said, all of those other names that you have, they're relevant to a different reality that you find yourself in. You are the same person, but you have a business relationship, you have a parent relationship, you have a child relationship, and therefore each one of you relates to you with a specific name which depicts their relationship. So the name is an expression of the relationship, and it's not really an expression of the whole you. It's just an expression of part of you. Part of your existence, part of the things that you do. Hashem, the Medrash says, gives a list of all the names. It says sometimes Hashem is Rachamim, sometimes Hashem is Din, sometimes Hashem is a creator. There's the name Shakai, and he goes through all the names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and each one represents HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kahaviyachol, in a different pose. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing something else, and we're perceiving him in a different way, and therefore Hashem's name changes. Chalila, we're not discussing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu underwent some kind of a change, but rather we're perceiving his handiwork in a different venue, and therefore we relate ourselves to him in a different way. So that's why Hashem has so many names. I have a very simple explanation, even though my father didn't say anything I didn't know, but I definitely couldn't have pulled that rabbit out of the hat. I was not able to do that, and it's a fine lesson. So, Klal Yisrael goes down to Mitzrayim, and they're given a code. And this code is passed down from generation to generation. The Goyal will say, who sent you here? And you will give Hashem's name. If he gives the right name, you know he's the Goyal. If he gives the wrong name, you know he's not the Goyal. And the name was Eke Asher Eke. I will be what I will be. Okay, this is famous Chazal. And we don't find this name anywhere else. It's a very strange name. And what kind of name is that altogether? I will be what I will be. Sounds like a hippie from the 60s. What in the world is I will be what I will be? To make matters worse, Rabbi Shapiro points out that there's a machlokes in Shulchan Aruch in Yeridea if this is one of the names of Hashem or not. There's Shema Sheinu Nimchokim, Hashem, Shakai, Adnus, Tzvokos. There's a whole list of 7 names, and according to one girsa, possibly an 8th name of Eke Asher Eke. Now, again, what are we fighting about? Either you're in or you're out. I'm okay either way because I don't get what's going on anyway, so it's fine. But obviously, there's some kind of a machlokes going on over here. What's this machlokes about? And to make matters worse, what does Eke Asher Eke mean? I will change as need be. That's not a name. I would just prove to you that it's not a name. And this is based, what I'm saying is for sure true because a malach said it, not me. And I'm just going to explain this the way that Shimshon Pinkus, I heard him say this once live. A fascinating thing. Yaakov fights with the angel and he says, give me your name. Give me a bracha. He says, what's your name? In Navi, the parents of Shimshon, they asked the malach that informed them that they're going to have a baby, what's your name? And he says, Lama zati shalishmi. And the Mefarshim explain the reason why a malach doesn't have a name, just like the Sar Shel Esav doesn't have a name, is because their name is changed depending on what operation they're executing. They have a per gicha, per every excursion that they make, they have a different name. And as I'll just share with you what I heard from Shimshon Pinkus, because it's always nice to say a Musar thing. I lived a very long life, so to speak. Everybody here lived a very long life. We have all seen changes in our lifetimes that our grandparents didn't see a tenth of them. In other words, just take the computer, the telephone. There's so many things in our lives, air conditioning, for some people, plumbing. There are so many things that our lives are so vastly different than they were a mere 100 years ago, 125. We live in all. And as time goes by, the changes happen more and more rapidly, and we don't even take notice of the change. It's like, there's a lady that I knew that she went to school by horse, and when she died, she was writing emails to her great-great-grandchildren every day. It's like weird, it's hard to believe that one person can incorporate all that change in their lifetime. And when I was a bocher, they used to speak about the nisayon of the bochrim in Europe, in the yeshivas. They used to read books of kfira. And because of these books of kfira, they became irreligious. Then, I'm just sharing with you some things that I lived through. I came to America. I means the yeshiva came to America. And then there was the avodah zara of going to college. How are you going to support your family if you don't go to college? Today, we live many years past that. People my age didn't go to college and they supported their family. So that Yetzer Hara doesn't exist. Then there was the Yetzer Hara for television. And then, is it still around? Television? Is it still around? Think so, okay. Listen to that. The Avodah Zarah was a suffix if it's this bottle already, right? and then there's videos, and then, I don't want to break it to you guys, but probably in 15 years, I'll tell you, do you remember when there's this thing called social media? Okay? It's like the Yetzer Haras, as Rav Shimshon Pinkus said, what you're asking for the sod of the Yetzer Hara, because the Yetzer Hara is the Malach HaMavet, it's all the same. What are you asking my name? By the time I tell you my name, it's going to change. I have a friend of mine who he used to be the IBM distributor in Yerushalayim. And he told me, I don't know if you guys remember IBM, he said, if I have it, it's obsolete. In other words, by the time it's manufactured, we're already on to something else. So the Yetzer Hara says, Lama tisha lishmi. Why are you asking for my name? It's irrelevant. My name is irrelevant because it's forever changing. Yeah, I will be what I will be means the HaKadosh Baruch Hu is forever changing. Now there are scrambles that happen. Situations arise. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu can do nisim. Doing nisim is what's called in the Svarim HaKadoshim shidud marachot. It's something like if you're up north and you turn on your Waze and you find that you're in Baghdad. Okay? It means somehow HaKadosh Baruch Hu is rewiring the system and the chometz will be madlik. Really, normal is that shemen should be madlik. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will change the science temporarily and make inflammable things flammable and flammable things inflammable. We'll have an override and change things. This is what we call a nes. Now, we also have a different kind of a nes on a higher level. There are nisim that happen without shidud marachot. I would like to call your attention to one of them. The fact that there is millions of Jews living in Eretz Yisrael today is, I'll just use a simple word, it's not normal, okay? It shouldn't be. Let's say it shouldn't be. I think that as years go by and we recognize more and more the enemies around us and how much they hate us, the analogy of keves achas among shivim ze'evim, the only suffix is that. Why is only shivim? And the answer is because only 70 nations. But be'etzem, they splinter into many, and we shouldn't be existing. This is a neis nigla. Now, but this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's haftachat HaKlal Yisrael, and that's why it happens. But it's not explainable. Mishya Hashem Yadlik, Yom L'Choyim Yadlik, means as follows. It's not an ace. That's the way it's supposed to be. Meaning, in the world of Torah, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said that the Bria is behoven to the Torah, so if the Torah needs something to happen, it happens. It's not a miracle. A miracle means that there is the default, and we sometimes override the default by programming it in what we need. There is a level of existence that there's no default. You could make it however you want. This happened in Yitzias Mitzrayim. The creation of Klal Yisrael created a reality that it is whatever the Torah needs. And that's how the Bria works. It's not an override. It's the Pashut Pshat. This is called the ultimateness. And with this, we explain the following. Who am I? I want to tell you something. I was in America just recently, and I have a very, very close friend who's a distinguished Rosh Yeshiva in America. Nebuch, he happens to have me as a friend. And I went to eat Malach Malka in his house, and he commented to me, you know, you're from the few people that I could actually be 100% myself with. And I was thinking, is that good? Is that bad? Or is this himself? In other words, if you, any one of you, got together with your best friend from the time that you were 12 to 14 years old, you would probably act at a certain level inappropriate. Why? Because it would bring you back to that place and time, and you would act like you're 14 years old. Tidbayesh. You're not 14 years old. Right? So, who is the real you? When you act like a 14-year-old, the you of 14 years old, you're faking it. That's not who you really are. You're doing it, as they say, for old time's sake. You're not really there. You're just not really there. You are not who you were. You're somebody else. I will be. Asher what I will be means that I am there now. And that's what's supposed to be. The necessity that Klal Yisrael will have will become the default reality at that time. And it does not have to continue to exist that way. It can change again. Because it's only there now, because that's what's necessary now. If something else will become necessary, then something else will happen. What I just said is the encapsulation of that the Bria is beholden to the needs of a Klal Yisrael. But at a higher level, beforehand we thought that the Torah can hijack the Teva. And now I'm telling you something otherwise. There is no Teva really if you live on a certain plane. Now I'd like to share with you a story which illustrates this. And in my opinion, it's worth it that you came here tonight just to hear this Musar. This Musar, I have absolutely no ill feelings about telling it to you, because I don't think anybody here, myself included, is at this madrega. But this is where we have to work to get to. Rabbi Feinstein was at a chasana. He was not the Masada Kedushin. And under the chuppah, the mother of the boy or the girl says that my child is a mamzer. And this wedding can't happen. The Masada Kedushin turned white. And then he continued. Why did he turn white? For the obvious reason. Why did he continue? Because the halacha is mefurish that a lady is not neman, or a man is not neman. They're not neman to passel their children. They could say something that will change their status, but they can't say anything to change the status of their child. So the rabbi, he figured this out, and he continued and ignored the lady. That's a beautiful story, but that's the hakdama to the story. The way I heard the story was, Moshe Feinstein walked over to the rabbi afterwards and asked him, why did you turn white? She's not believed. In other words, what happened? We say, wow, we believe this lady, now we're in a pickle, let's take out our books. We found in our books that she's not believed. So we're going to treat it like we don't believe it. Do we believe it or not? Now I'd like to share with you this question, which I had once halacha l'maisa. This is an amazing story, a horrible story, and one should never know of such a story. I sat by one of the great rabbanim that had the schus to be mishamish, and I walked in the middle of a serious conversation. And I'm saying this with all the technical difficulties because it's relevant to understand. There was a Svardish, a fellow there, with a big gold ring and a necklace from Chutz La'aretz. You could see a wealthy guy. And the subject was that he just lost all of his money. A multimillionaire, he just lost all of his money. That means if you have 20 million, you lost 15 million, you lost all your money, right? Well, I don't know exactly how much money you have to lose all your money, and what's called you have no money left, but I'm willing to take the meiser of the whatever's left. But actually, so he says as follows. This is the question. I lost all of my money. I came running here to Eretz Yisrael, and I went to my Baba. Sfardi has a Baba. That means his Makubal. And I asked the Makubal, why did I lose all my money? And the Makubal said, ask your wife. So I went home and I asked my wife. And my wife said that she was Mazana. And she said who she was Mazana with. And this was the question this is a true story. I came to this, what do we do in this exact situation? What happened is irrelevant. I'm not going to discuss that question. We'll leave that for the rabbis to discuss. The halacha says as follows. The halacha is that a lady, she doesn't like her husband, she wants out. So this Gemara discusses it. So she says, I was Mazana. Now the halacha is a lady who's Mazana, so her husband has to give her a get. So the halacha is a lady who says that she's Mazana. The Gemara says, we teach him to say, it's not true. Because otherwise, all ladies that want a cheap way out will just say that they're Mazana and get out. So the husband says, I don't believe you. And the halacha is that she stays married. Yeah, well, that's true. But if he believes it, then the halacha is that he has to divorce her. So I said to my Rebbe, I said, that's a wonderful Gemara. And I have no problem with that Gemara. This guy just spent $5,000 to fly here, to go to his Baba. His Baba tells him, ask your wife. She asks his wife, and Dvorim Hanikorim. So we're going to go and tell him, don't believe your wife. Kriyas Yamsuf is easier than that. Of course he's going to believe his wife. We already proved it. Him saying in this case, I don't believe you, does it help? This was the question which I asked him. And he told me at that time that there's a tshuva from Shlomo Zalman Auerbach about something very similar, which was not printed, and then we got a hold of the tshuva before, I think Shlomo Zalman was still alive when this was going on. But actually, this is called, do you believe it or you don't believe it? Okay, you got it? Does this guy believe it or he doesn't believe it? When you say that you have emunah, do you really have emunah? Now I'd like to share with you the following story. Rabbi Petterberger had some gvirim in his house, and the gvirim asked him, do you believe that Mashiach could come today? He said, of course I believe it. So the gvir asked him, it says in the Gemara that Mashiach's not going to come, the amount of money that we possess here, there's no way that it could be lost in a day. So how could you believe that Mashiach's going to come? Now, I'm not right now going to get involved in what Rabbi Petterberger answered them. But the guy was asking a real question. I enjoy his question. in the reality that I live in, I can't believe that it could happen. When we understand this idea of there is no reality, it's what Klal Yisrael needs that becomes the reality. There is nothing stable in the world. We live in a world that's Toila al Balima. It was not possible al piderech hateva for Klal Yisrael to leave Mitzrayim. It says it in the Zohar, it's not possible. What happened was not that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made shiur marachos. He did not cause a miracle. He did something simpler. He just put Klal Yisrael's needs in the driver's seat. Once Klal Yisrael's needs are in the driver's seat, if this is what they need, that's what happens. Now, I will just take one example of something that happened in my life, which shows how things which are permanent forever could cease to exist in one day. And I'm saying this to you because it's important to have a mashal of what does it mean to have emunah. The Berlin Wall. Anybody who lived pre the Berlin Wall could not believe that the Berlin Wall, they'd sell pieces of it. You know what I mean? It was just like dismantled totally in a, I don't know what to call it, in a peaceful fashion. It's not to be believed. And I would just like to end with something current. What was Paro thinking before Makas B'choros? What is Sinwar thinking today? What are Hania thinking today? They still don't believe it. Anybody who walks out of here tonight without the belief that it could end peacefully is not ready for the Seder. If Klal Yisrael needs a Yeshua, it could happen in spite of the UN. It could happen for real. Kasher Eke means what Klal Yisrael needs, and if we need it, it will happen. Just as we went out of Mitzrayim then, we can go out of Mitzrayim and Mitzvah Hashem this year, and even before Leil Chamisha Aser, we should be Zeichel Lecho, Min Azvachim, Min Apsachim, Beis HaMikdash.